under the pale moonlight. Vinny and Phil bring the shadows to life. Tales of the ghostly whispers in the night. Bigfoot and aliens ready for the strife. The darkness thickens, the air is cold. Haunting stories waiting to unfold. Supernatural Sundays, the veil is thin. Join us in the chaos, let the night begin. With every whisper and each chilling tale, dare to believe where shadows prevail. EVPs echo through the haunted trees. Demons lurk as the chill hits with ease. But the cast rolling with guests to amaze. Cryptids and spirits were lost in the haze. Northmen in the foliage, watch your back. Dogmen prowling, ready to attack. Supernatural Sundays, the veil is thin. Join us in the chaos, let the night begin. With every whisper and each chilling tale, dare to believe where shadows prevail. Moving in the foliage, watch your back. Through the prowling, ready to attack. Supernatural Sundays, the veil is thin. Join us in the chaos, let the night begin. With every whisper and each chilling tale, dare to believe where shadows prevail. So tune in next week, fear in your soul. Darkness awaits, let the stories unfold.
Hello.
How's it going?
You hear me good?
Yeah. Welcome to Supernatural Sundays with Phil Billy.
What's going on? What we got going on tonight?
Well, we've had a busy weekend. We went up to the Cryptid Con. Went up there and seen some Bigfoot hunters and checked out some dog man hunters and talked to some of the scientists and stuff off the Expedition Bigfoot, and some Finding Bigfoot people were up there and had a pretty good time. Picked up a couple souvenirs, some copies of some evidence. I got a big cast of a foot, but it's too heavy to hold up right now, so maybe in a future episode. But last weekend we went over to one of our members' homes we had our first ever paranormal, supernatural paranormal party and investigation podcast all in one, and got a few pretty interesting things in her home. She has some really high EMF going on, some of the highest EMF I've ever seen. So I really feel like there's some electrical disturbance going on there. Could be paranormal, could be extraterrestrial. We don't know, but glad we got to go over, celebrate her birthday, and have her podcast and get some evidence too. It's kind of how it's been going.
Yeah, and I know we were kind of hoping to see some aliens, but didn't get happen that night. Maybe one night.
One of the videos later tonight, there's a little clip that says, they'll say Uncle Chuck's house. I went over for my Uncle Chuck's celebration of life, and while we were there, we did get something weird flying over his house. It was going kind of too slow to be the space station, and it was kind of too bright to be a satellite. We don't know what it was, but I managed to capture a quick clip of it with my phone, and so that's the only UFO stuff we've kind of observed this week. But there is some really cool stuff come out this week. There was a leaked footage. We don't know if it's from a drone or satellite. If anybody remembers flight Malaysian 370, the flight that went missing.
Mm-hmm.
Now they've got footage. It looks almost like some tiny little orb UFOs come in and like go around it, and then it's gone. Like it goes into a wormhole or portal or something. So that was some breaking stuff that came out just like 2 days ago. So I was kind of glad that I was able to grab that. But as far as UFOs go, the government's admitted that we do have biological, non-human, whatever you want to call them, and some of the craft. And we've been reverse engineering it, which we kind of all thought that anyway. Like nobody's freaked out. There was nobody in shock. They're like, hey, by the way, we got aliens. And everybody's like, yeah, we know. So I think the world's ready.
Absolutely. And then tonight, for the second half of the show, we got our guest.
Sylvia.
You want to give a little info on that real quick?
Yeah, she's from I believe Pekin, Illinois, right across the river from Peoria, and she's an investigator and an author, and she's wrote a few books on the Peoria Hospital, State Mental Hospital, and then she's done some traveling and wrote a few more books on like haunted amusement parks, zoos, different places around the world. She's got it's almost like a whole new category, paranormal nonfiction, and which was kind of glad to see that. I've been reading up on some of her works. There's also some other stuff that she's written that I believe is fiction, and I think she even has a romance novel in there for the ladies. So we're looking forward to talking to her the second half of the program. And I'm from Illinois originally, so I was kind of excited about some of the areas she's went to, and so we'll have her on the second half, and it should be a pretty good show, very informative.
Good, great conversations. All right, well, let's kick it off.
Absolutely.
Did you know that Johnny Cash's spirit came to visit Loretta Lynn? Now, Loretta Lynn was known for her clairvoyant abilities that were seemingly passed down from her mother's side of the family. She knew that her father had passed away before receiving the news due to a dream, and often told the tales of seeing spirits at her Hurricane Mills plantation home. She saw a woman dressed in white crying on her balcony, and there were encounters with the ghosts of Civil War soldiers. But one day, Loretta got a visit from the spirit of a friend, Johnny Cash. Loretta was in the recording studio and was actually being produced by Johnny and June's son, John Carter Cash, and she was recording one of Johnny's songs. Loretta looked up and saw a man in a gray suit walk through the door. Loretta said that it appeared to be her old friend, Johnny Cash. The spirit disappeared, and Loretta said, I could have swore I just saw Johnny Cash walk through the door. Here's Loretta telling the story in her own words. Y'all let me know what y'all think in the comments. Don't forget to hit the like and the follow. I appreciate y'all.
I was recording one of Johnny's songs, Johnny Cash, and I looked up and I thought that I seen this gray suit come in, And it looked like Johnny. Of course, when you're recording and it's dark kind of in the studio, I quit singing. I said, I would have swore I seen Johnny Cash walking through that door, So we stopped and then we talked a little while and then started back to singing.
The ghost of Johnny Cash.
Pretty interesting. Johnny Cash was actually a big Civil War buff, and him and Hank Jr. actually would go around with metal detectors and look for relics and whatnot. So he was really big into artifacts and history. And when he passed away, he had a pretty big cannon, and they used to shoot it off and get the neighbors pretty riled up and whatnot. But when Johnny passed away, I believe it was Johnny's son contacted Hank Williams Jr. and told him, he said that the cannon goes back to you. So Hank has the cannon that he'd actually originally give to Johnny Cash. So he's got Johnny Cash's cannon and a couple other cannons. I thought that was kind of interesting. You guys are into Civil War history or that kind of thing. I also kind of like the guy's Whalen hat. That was pretty good. The guy that was doing the talk there. So you guys are into any kind of old school country. I don't know if anybody else noticed he had on a Waylon Jennings hat talking about Johnny with a Loretta Lynn story. So it was pretty good. I'm down.
Yep, absolutely.
That night I was drunk and on cocaine, and I looked down that hallway and I had a seance going on. I said, Hank, show yourself. Hank, damn it. And I started cussing him. And I said, Hank, why you so big? Because you died young? I looked down that long, dim hallway, people. Hank Williams was sitting on my couch. He had on a fedora and no shirt, and he was smoking a filterless cigarette. I said, Mr. Williams, we got to write a song. He was there. I felt his presence. His image only stayed visible for maybe a minute and a half. Then he disappeared visually, but he was with me. It was his idea to do the ride. How else would we be together? We were riding back up to Franklin to his old house, but he cried just south of Nashville. I don't blame him. He turned that car around. This is where I get off, boy. I'm going back to Alabama. And I remembered Miss Audrey's line. You don't have to call him Mr. Honey. The whole world called him Hank.
That's a very famous song written about Hank Williams. So it's kind of interesting how that the guy got the whole backstory for the whole song's based on him seeing Hank's ghost and everything. So I thought that was pretty interesting. We're only about 45 minutes from Nashville, so if there's anybody watching from down in Tennessee, we thought we'd throw out a little local ghost lore.
I like how you told us story that's reaching too.
Yeah, I've heard that song a few times, so it kind of makes sense now. I'd never heard the backstory where he came up with the lyrics, though. That was pretty good.
Absolutely.
Did you know that Johnny Cash's spirit came to visit Loretta Lynn? Now, Loretta Lynn was known for her clairvoyant abilities that were seemingly passed down from her mother's side of the family. She knew that her father had passed away.
Okay, I just wanted to hear the first part of that again. So passed down from his mother's side of the family. Her mother's side.
Yeah. Yeah, sounded like Loretta had some little bit of clairvoyance on her Hurricane Ranch down there. She would routinely see Civil War soldiers out there on her property, and it was just like an everyday thing to her. She didn't bother her, didn't scare her. She knew they were there, and she was okay with it. But I know Ghost Adventures went down there and at her ranch did a whole expose, and it was pretty interesting. Loretta, they had her on. She was talking about some of the stuff that she would see around the ranch, and she kind of participated with the investigation. So that was a pretty good episode.
Yeah, absolutely.
I am very weirded out right now, and here's why. I downloaded an app today that I saw someone using earlier on TikTok. Now, it's a ghost hunting app. I don't even know if I believe in ghosts. I am agnostic. But basically, the app listens, and if it hears ghosts, It tells you what they're saying, but like there's a lot of downtime. It's a lot of silence and occasionally a word. Now again, I downloaded this for entertainment purposes only. So tell me why I sit down on the floor. I set my phone down on the floor. Veronica's on the other side of me. And the phone says, toy? Interesting. I happen to have one of her toys in my pocket. I pull it out. I throw it to play fetch. She runs to get it. But instead of coming back, I hear the phone say, "You can hear me?" And I look over, and she is in the other room sitting next to her toy and just looking back at me like this. And then, remember in middle school when you were walking through the hallways and someone would step on your heel? Well, I accidentally did that to her, and I almost tripped. And me and the phone at the same time said, "Are you okay?" What the? Does it communicate with animals? What? Then it started going on about something about consciousness. But for real, are my cats communicating through ghosts? Are my cats communicating through an app? Are ghosts pretending to be my cats? Are my cats ghosts?
I don't know, coincidence maybe. I don't put a lot of stock in those apps that say for entertainment only, but I've had a few other people download those and they swear something happened.
Well,
If
my,
it
my
doesn't
thing
say,
is, I guess I'm just more of like an original, kind of. It's hard for me to get into phone apps. Like I know a lot of people use the spirit boxes and stuff like that on phone apps, but it's still kind of hard for me to kind of follow with that because, I mean, it is an app. You know what I mean? It's a
something
phone.
has
If
to
your phone can
manipulate.
listen to you talk about that you want to eat a chili cheese dog, then all of a sudden you're getting coupons for chili cheese dogs at Walmart sent to
Yeah,
you. I mean,
yeah.
it just seems like they could just all of them can just kind of play off you and then what it's picking up and what it's hearing.
Even some of the apps that say they're utility and they're for paranormal investigation, some of those, like I think Spirit Talker's one of them. It'll say the same stuff over and over everywhere you go. The one I like is Necrophonics because we have had some correlations with people's names that we would not have known and stuff with that, and their voice. You can hear like different voices. I'm not 100% sure how it works. I also have Spirit Box with like radio frequencies. Sometimes to me it just sounds like gibberish. Every once in a while you'll get a real clear word come through, but
Well, and we've tested that before. So we've used an app at the same time that a spirit box was going, and you would think they're both giving you the same thing. So you would, at least they would go off at the same time. But a lot of times they don't even coincide with each other. And
no.
if it's picking up frequencies on both sides, then it should at least, ping at the same time or go at the same time.
Well, the thing with the Spirit Box, a lot of those run off radio frequency, but your phones don't pick up AM, FM radio frequencies. They pick up cell phone signals. So to me, is it a canned words? Is it pre-programmed to randomly spit out stuff in response to like when you like you're saying you go to Walmart and look at peanut butter, next thing you get all these ads for peanut butter. You're talking about it, next thing you know you're getting ads for it. Uh, I don't think the technology is advanced enough to pick up what we're thinking about. Like if you're thinking about buying a car, next thing you get car ads, but I do know it picks up audio if you say something like you're looking for something, and then next thing you get all these ads. So I'm not sure if those phone apps work like that or not. Also, if you go into some place and you've got a sensitive person with you, they'll get a name or they get a feeling or they hear something talking to them. I can't pick any of that up on any of my equipment either. So I can't disprove or prove that either. I just kind of got to go with it. But some of my old school devices, if it's sealed inside a glass jug and it starts moving and there's no earthquake, then I'm like, okay, there's something going on here. I don't know what's going on, but I know it's not electronic at that point.
Right.
In your most recent movie, Interview with the Extraterrestrial, about one of the greatest channels Daryl Anka, who channels a being called Bashar.
He's so believable, but I didn't know if I believed him. So I thought what I wanted to do with this movie was set off on a journey to potentially debunk him, right? This guy's walking around acting like he's a fucking extraterrestrial and knows all the answers, all the riddles to the universe. I don't know if I believe that that's true. So I went around and I asked hundreds of different people to give me questions, because I thought if I got the opportunity to sit down with an ET, I'm not just going to squander that and ask my own questions. I wanted to hear what everybody wanted to know. And I sat down with him and he became Bashar, or let Bashar in. I'm rapid firing questions to him about what's the Fibonacci code and what is this and what is that and tell me the riddles of the universe. And for an hour and a half, he just sat there and was like, no hesitation ever. No stumbling his speech ever. He didn't ask me to stop the interview for a second.
Well,
I got a clip on here with Bashar actually talking, but I've followed him a little bit, and he channels what he claims to be an extraterrestrial being, and you can ask him some pretty off the wall stuff, and he's got an answer for everything. Like she's saying, he never hesitates. He just
here, we
point
can go ahead
blank,
and
like
play that video if you want.
when he channels this guy, it's like the aliens talking directly to you.
Let's check it out. It may kind of put a little bit of perspective for us.
I one time had a dream encounter with Bashar, one of the few that I've had where I know I'm in communication with him, because that's all that's happening in the dream. I'm just literally talking to him like I'm talking to you. So it's not a normal dream. But in this dream, it was trying to answer the question of, well, what would happen if you did land, if you did show up and come out physically? And so in the dream, I saw his ship land, I saw him get out, and I saw him walk toward me. And when he was about 20 feet away, I lost my sense of self. I started seeing my body through his eyes, and my body jerked back. And it was like he stepped back and he said, now see, that's what would happen. This was many, many years ago. He said, you have to have a stronger sense of your own identity, and you have to operate on a higher frequency, or you can lose your sense of self in our presence. And we don't want that to happen, because our energy is so much more overwhelming than yours that you tend to give us your power, defer to us. You just become something that is more, it's less of your personality and more of what you actually are. You're being forced, in a sense, to be more of your soul. And therefore your physical personality tends to fade in that light. And therefore you have to have a better balance within yourself to retain your identity as a physical being, while you're also ramping up your energy to express more of your spirit and more of your soul.
He's kind of explaining how it works, but like I've watched some of his, where people record him talking and they're asking questions, and it's like you're talking directly to this other being. It's like he's just there. It's like his whole face changes, like he's just like a speaker talking, and whatever it is talking through him. But all the responses you get are like pretty advanced stuff. It's not something like you'd hear every day.
What do you see?
I see aliens.
Nice. Are you not human this time?
I'm loving being in this place.
Okay.
It's home. It's my home.
Nice. What does it look like?
It's so peaceful and light. There's light everywhere,
Beautiful.
and everybody's happy. Love, nothing else.
Nice. And does the body feel male or female, or do you not have that?
I feel like I'm a male version of the alien.
Okay. And if you're old or young?
I'm old.
Okay.
I'm very old.
And if you look down at your feet, what do your feet look like?
It's I'm not wearing anything just skin of the alien.
What color?
It's green and it's like 3 doors.
Wow. That's so neat.
3 doors and very peaceful.
So I believe that was the lady who had undergone hypnosis. And a
Mm-hmm.
lot of times, people when they get abducted, they don't remember anything, and then after a while, they start having some weird nightmares and trauma, and they go eventually see a psychiatrist or psychologist, and then they put them under hypnosis, and then they'll start remembering things that happened to them. And what it sounds like she remembered it like she was actually inside an alien's body or something. And the 3 toes I thought was interesting.
That's pretty wild.
I got a couple abduction clips on here. Pretty interesting. Some people remember everything right off the bat, and then others have to they have to go through a hypnosis, like regressive hypnosis, to pull it out.
I think one of the biggest stories that probably everybody's heard, of course, is Travis, and his would come back. Yeah, his would come back like he would have trigger events that would make him kind of take him back and help him remember on things that had happened for that time period he was abducted.
I've been on a mission, yeah. Moving like the president. Smoking on the president. You bitches say I'm having sin. Told her I'm from Sirius. She didn't take me serious. Told her I'm an alien. Let her see my pyramid. I come from the stars. Let me guide your way when you get lost. I come from the stars. Let me guide your way when you get lost. Spaceships don't come equipped with rearview mirrors. They just dip.
Got a couple versions of that. That's supposedly the leaked footage of, I believe, a satellite that was. And why were they tracking that airplane on a satellite? Why were they, you know what I mean? Or
Right,
was it a
that's not
drone?
really
Why were they tracking it?
on
You
this
know what I mean?
practice.
Or, yeah.
Yeah, I think this is the other one you got on here for it.
I've been on a mission, yeah. Moving like the president. Smoking on the president. You bitches say I'm having sin. Told her I'm from Sirius. She didn't take me serious. Told her I'm an alien. Let her see my pyramid. I come from the stars. Let me guide your way when you get lost. I come from the stars. Let me guide your way when you get lost. Spaceships don't come equipped with rearview mirrors. They just dip.
Pretty wild. That would explain like how it disappeared, but where the hell did it go? Or supposedly it's leaked footage. The guy that leaked it, I think's he might be incarcerated right now, but That's the conspiracy theory one for the week. Anyway, it could
Well,
just
why
be
would
completely
they?
made
I
up.
mean, I don't understand why they would be like why a satellite was, filming a flight. Like it's not like that's common practice.
Unless it's something going on with their testing out their reverse engineered extraterrestrial technology, and they knew something was going to happen, and they just was getting proof of it, or you know what I mean? Or it's just complete made up CGI crap. Could be.
Yeah, and I think isn't it weird though that the shot was from the? I mean, it was like from the side.
From the up above and the side, and then the other thermal was from a different angle completely, like the thermal image of it. Like they were
Right. So you
tracking
had
it
like
with two
three
different
different angles of
angles
it.
and two different devices. So I'm like, okay, and it looked like somebody with a telescope kept trying to track it back in, like manually tracking it. But is it complete made up AI stuff? I don't know. I just thought it was pretty interesting. They haven't found the plane or any trace of it, so
Well, I know I watched. So I'd watched a documentary on it, and I was reading into it a little bit. And so in the ocean, they had found what they think is like an outlining of it laying on the bottom of the trench, but still nothing's kind of come out of it, I guess. But
they're not even sure which direction it went.
yeah, because the flight pattern was weird. It had went up and then it had cut back
Yeah.
and then bleeped out. Bill.
Kind of a modern version of that Twilight Zone in that part of the movie with the gremlins climbing around on the airplane wing.
It looked a little
You
more
saw
scary
that?
than Twilight Zone.
If you were on a plane and you saw that, would you just shut the blind, or would you alert somebody, or would you like, hey, bring me another drink? Because
I don't think I'd really
I
believe I
would
was
be
seeing it.
afraid somebody slipped something in my drink if I seen that climbing along the wing there like that.
Absolutely. Was the music saying when to go?
I'm not sure what it was saying. It had a good beat to it, but I wasn't really sure about the lyrics. I was just thinking that thing was creepy climbing along the airplane wing there like that. I'm like, how is he holding on? Has he got like suction cups on his feet or magnetic feet or how? But the airplane's aluminum. He should slide off. So like,
Hold on,
how
check
the hell?
it out again. I think he's saying when to go. Yeah, so definitely Wendigo.
Yeah, Wendigo.
Which we know is in the cryptid family.
Oh, absolutely. Usually you find them out in the woods, though, not on an airplane wing.
Yeah, I'm going to chalk that one up as just some fun time CGI.
Absolutely.
On a video. Definitely be wild, though. You looked out and you saw something like that.
Have something for you to listen to. according to some very reliable sources, including some researchers with access to some extremely advanced equipment, and also a NASA documentarian, this is the first signal that we have received from an alien civilization. The first signal that we can confirm did not come from a human source and is artificial in nature.
Okay.
What do you think? I mean, you make a lot of the music for our podcast here, and like you make a lot of tracks and stuff. What do you think? Does that sound like
I
something
mean, it
you've
all
heard?
goes into the biomes and stuff. I mean, yeah, you could definitely make that. You know, it's just hitting different levels. I think there's like in the biome scale, I think there's 32. You know, up or down that you can go.
I don't think he
But
wants to reveal his reliable source.
like I would think, it would seem to me like, so just like you heard, so where we had set up the transmission out into space, and then it came back, and we just put some basic stuff like basic mathematics and our DNA strand and stuff like that. And then I don't know how many years later it was. It was a pretty good gap, 35 years later or something. We'd got where the problems were worked out, and then another DNA strand was sent with it. So I mean, I don't know if you've read the story about all that.
I'd heard that
stuff.
one, but there was something recently they sent out. I think NASA sent it out, or that SETI project sent out, and just to see if anybody would pick it up. And there was a father and daughter team actually received the message. So and they thought it was extraterrestrial in nature, but we sent it out on purpose to see if anybody could pick it up, and this father and daughter did pick it up. So that was pretty cool. So we got people listening out there.
All right.
That would suck,
Through
though.
the fog, we saw it, a towering figure with glowing eyes and a floating, metallic appearance. September 12th, 1952. In the quiet town of Flatwoods, West Virginia, something otherworldly appeared. This is my story of encountering the Flatwoods monster. That night, I was out with friends when we saw a bright light streak across the sky and crash into the woods. Curiosity got the best of us, so we ventured into the forest to investigate. As we approached the crash site, a strange mist filled the air. Through the fog, we saw it, a towering figure with glowing eyes and a floating metallic appearance. The Flatwoods monster. Terrified, we ran back to town and reported what we saw. The local sheriff and a news reporter came to investigate, but found no trace of the creature. The only evidence was the lingering sulfuric smell and the fear in our eyes. Conspiracy theories abound. Some say it was an alien visit, others claim it was a secret military experiment. The truth remains a mystery, but the legend of the Flatwoods monster endures. The Flatwoods monster's eerie encounter continues to haunt me. Some tales are too dark to forget. If you like scary stories about true crime, haunted lore, terrifying cryptids, alien encounters, and legendary mayhem, like, follow, and share this content. Comment below on a topic that you would like Legendary Mayhem to do a video on.
See, it looks like the Virginias get all the cool things. Like, of course, you got Mothman and
yeah, they got Mothman, and there was another creature here. It might be the Wampus cat, but I don't know if that's Virginia or I think that might be Missouri. I'm trying to think.
I think that is Missouri.
We do have Dogman though, Land Between the Lakes.
That's true. Yeah, that's my favorite. So.
In 2013, an internal NASA document was leaked, exposing a shocking secret. It turns out, NASA's mission isn't just about exploring space. Their real focus? Searching for ancient Anunnaki technology. But who were the Anunnaki? These ancient beings were worshipped as gods, said to have come from the stars with powers beyond anything we can comprehend. According to some, they played a role in creating humanity itself. Before turning to the stars, NASA was heavily invested in exploring Earth's oceans. They were mapping the sea floor, discovering lost ruins, and analyzing unknown life forms. But something happened, something so dark and dangerous that they abruptly abandoned their research. What did they find? Rumors suggest they uncovered evidence of an ancient, powerful entity lurking beneath the ocean floor, a force so threatening they believed only ancient Anunnaki technology could protect us. Since this terrifying discovery, NASA has secretly been working to reverse engineer Anunnaki artifacts. Their goal? To create defenses against whatever is hiding in our oceans. What could be so dangerous beneath the waves that it terrified even NASA's top scientists? Could it be a sleeping power from another world, or something waiting to rise and reclaim the surface?
Yep, it's kaijus.
Godzilla.
Yep, it's all the kaijus coming. Yeah, there's a lot of different things about the Anunnaki, and it's even you can even go to like the religious perspective of it. So the time like before Jesus and stuff, your time of Noah and stuff, they had these fallen angels called the Watchers, and that's kind of some stories and stuff kind of spruced out that the Anunnaki was around that time period too. And what really kicked it all off was we had got into one of the Egyptian pyramids, and this was a few years ago, and they'd actually found our DNA sketched out on the wall, which this tomb had said that it wasn't open for so many, a couple thousand years or something. And so they're like, how could our DNA be, encrypted onto this wall if DNA wasn't even really a thing,
Yeah.
Heavy sources in DNA and stuff just got, really studied and stuff like that within the last 35 years.
We didn't even have cell phones back in the 60s.
Right. Which that all falls
DNA.
into, it's crazy too, because that your whole Area 51 stuff and your Roswell stuff, all that happens, and all of a sudden we take this just huge technological jump, where it was sticks and stones for how many of hundreds of years, thousands, and then all of a sudden within a 20-year span of all that happening, boom, cells, computers, everything, and just kind of grown from there.
Were the Anunnaki the one that had relations with humans and their offspring became like those the Nephilim and that kind of thing, or am I thinking of a different being?
Well, it depends on what story you're going with. I mean, it could be that, and that's where that kind of spruced into the whole story of the Nephilim and stuff being the Watchers. The Watchers came down; they were cast out, and it gets really deep into that. And that's all your time period of like Noah and stuff, and would fall into like the stories of a couple of the stories and stuff that's left out of the Bible, like the Book of Enoch, and those things all kind of goes from that time period. What do you got here? Uncle Chuck's house.
Yeah, that's my Uncle Chuck's house. We went over to Illinois for his celebration of life, and then
This is what you were telling us about earlier.
We were hanging out later that night. We saw this thing flying over.
Let's check it out.
Satellites is a lot clearer up there.
Come on, let's go in. It's cold. It's
I think
a lot
that thing done
clearer
left.
You get
Oh,
towards,
no, there
like,
it still
the
goes.
Horizon of the mountain.
Oh, it's still going. It's still going right over Uncle Chuck's house.
Here, pause up. I'll go out the other way.
I'm getting the UFO. There it goes.
Come on, let's go
Or is
the
it
other
a
way.
UAP they call them now?
Phone's dead. That's on it.
It looked like it was blinking a little more on the copy there, but on my phone it looks more solid. But my Japanese friends call them UFOs instead of UFO. They call it UFO for short. So
UFO.
Yeah, they're like UFO. So then that's why I just keep calling them that for fun. But yeah, now I don't know who decided to start calling them
You didn't think
UAP.
it's a space station or anything?
No, it was moving. Yeah, it was moving, but the unidentified aerial phenomenon, and I'm like, well, who decided to quit calling them UFOs? Unidentified flying object. What's the difference? I don't know why they got to keep changing stuff. I'm gonna stick with UFO and my UFOs. because everybody knows what the hell that is.
Right. Makes it a little easier. We'll go ahead and show this one. This video is a little bit longer than the rest of them and stuff like that, so we'll just kind of let this run. I'll just make it out full screen.
Cool.
Welcome back, everyone. Have you ever heard of the Tall Whites? This incredible story involves aliens, military secrets, and even a personal account. Buckle up as we explore the mysterious tale of Charles James Hall. Charles James Hall was a young weather observer in the U.S. Air Force stationed at Nellis Air Force Base in Nevada during the early 60s. His life took an unexpected turn when he began seeing what he claims were extraterrestrial beings. The story begins on training missions in the Nevada desert. Hall reported first seeing the Tall Whites. Tall, slender beings with striking white skin and large, expressive eyes. They became a regular sight for him, and his initial fear soon turned into curiosity. Hall described his encounters in detail. He asserted that he communicated with them and that they exhibited a peaceful demeanor. He even claimed to have learned about their technology and advanced lifestyle. He details a series of meetings where he engaged in conversations with the Tall Whites, who shared their advanced knowledge, technological insights and perspectives on humanity, emphasizing a peaceful coexistence and their interest in guiding humanity's development. He offers anecdotes that illustrate their capabilities, including their sophisticated spacecraft and abilities that far exceed human technology. Hall also blends his personal view with philosophical musings on trust, the potential for interspecies relationships, and the broader existential questions raised by the possibility of extraterrestrial life. He challenges us to reconsider our understanding of reality, suggesting that there is more to the universe than what is typically acknowledged by mainstream culture. Ultimately, he presents a case for the peaceful intentions of the Tall Whites and encourages a more open-minded approach to the existence of life beyond Earth. However, many skeptics argue that his evidence is purely anecdotal, lacking the physical proof that would substantiate his claims. Critics of Hall's story point out that it lacks verifiable evidence. Some believe it to be a product of imagination or a misunderstanding of natural phenomena. Despite this, a segment of the UFO community continues to support Hall's accounts as credible. Some believe Hall's encounters reflect a hidden agreement between the US government and alien beings. Others suggest that the Tall Whites are linked to a larger conspiracy involving military cover-ups related to alien technology and sightings. In wrapping up our exploration of walking among the Tall Whites, we are left with thought-provoking questions about humanity's relationship with the unknown. Charles' experiences challenge us to consider not just the existence of extraterrestrial life, but the meanings behind such encounters. If the Tall Whites truly represent a benevolent force with insights into our future, what can we learn from their perceived wisdom about cooperation, unity, and the cosmos? This narrative pushes us to assess our own behaviors and attitudes toward life, urging us to move beyond fear and skepticism. As we navigate our daily lives, we must ask ourselves, are we open to the possibilities that lie beyond our current understanding? Ultimately, the tale of the Tall Whites serves as a reminder that the universe holds countless mysteries and that embracing curiosity and conversation about our potential connections could lead to breakthroughs far beyond our imagination. If we were given the chance to communicate with extraterrestrial beings, what would you want to ask them, and what do you think we could learn from their perspective on our world? Until next time, keep questioning and exploring.
So what do you think, Phil? What would you want to ask them?
I want to try their food, the recipes, whatever they're cooking up. I want to try it. And then I'm thinking, I've never heard David Attenborough talk about extraterrestrial stuff before. That was kind of cool.
So you would ask aliens if you communicated with extraterrestrials, you'd want to talk about food recipes?
I want to try whatever they eat because it's got to be pretty good.
Does it?
I mean, we only have so many options of stuff we can eat and cook here on Earth. Imagine they can go anywhere in different universes and everything. Imagine what kind of stuff they're cooking up, you know?
All right.
It's all about food for me.
We'll kind of go more into the So we're going to have our guest on in about 10 minutes. So we got a couple things we can talk about before we jump over into that and stuff. So we'll go more into the haunting thing, the ghost kind of side of stuff. We've been kind of on aliens for a little bit. So one of the videos I see here talks about bringing something home. So again, let's start. Or if you want to, your normal investigation and stuff like that, we'll set out some stuff. Of course, if anybody watched last week, we demonstrated a lot of those, how to use them, what to use them on, different things like that. And definitely, which you yourself, you make a lot of some devices and stuff like that we can use. Which one of those we can kind of touch on that.
We call this the Paranormal Paramoo. And if a spirit or any kind of anyone comes around and ring the cowbell, then we know something's around. And just in case we don't have enough cowbell, we got more cowbell down here.
Guess what? I got a fever. And the only prescription is more cowbell. I could have used a little more cowbell. I could have used a little more cowbell.
So the cowbell there, we had that set up last week. And so I will say, though, it was, we've wanted this thing to move. We put it at everyone we go to. We want it to bang out one time, just hear it ring. So we did see both of the swivels on it and both of the bells were moving in a circular motion pretty consistently and pretty solid, the whole time. There wasn't really gaps in it. It didn't ding, but it was circling and it was moving. The only thing that kind of does move, I want to believe in something that was moving it, sitting there just twisting it around. But just where it was solid the whole time doing the exact same thing.
Yeah, it
throws me
down
off
a little
on
bit. It would go right back to moving, but it almost looked like the striker was sideways a couple times. But it's moved twice now, but we've never had it move hard enough to strike the bell. So hopefully, we'll get around something with a little more energy. Maybe it can make it go off. But the video we're talking about bringing something home. These gentlemen were actually out hunting artifacts, like they were out digging arrowheads, that kind of thing, and some bad stuff happened after they brought the arrowheads home. So be real careful where you're digging arrowheads. If anything even remotely looks like a mound or a burial ground or something like that, I would call it what we call when we're hunting rocks and artifacts, leave it right there.
I have a ghost story. It's the realest thing I've ever experienced in my life. I collect Native American artifacts. And so my buddy and I, we went one afternoon. We find some stuff. I go home, don't think anything about it. I lived in a cabin in the middle of the woods. Went to bed sober. And I woke up, my kitchen window had been unlatched and pushed open. Dude, what? My wife had bought this mirror. And so she and I hung this mirror. We looked at it really good. And we were like, okay, good. We go to bed. The next day, the mirror's got a giant scratch across the freaking mirror.
Dude.
So there was 1 week that I woke up every single night at 2:59 on the freaking dot. The last night I woke up borderline having a panic attack. My heart was racing. I was sweating. And I turned my lamp on and I put my feet on the side of the bed and I stand up. When I stood up, something jumped from that balcony to the floor and it ran through my house to the point where I grabbed my gun, dude, and I freaking racked that thing and I freaking vetted my entire house because it was so real that I was convinced that somebody was in my house. And dude, there was nothing.
So scared, right?
Dude, there was literally
that is the scariest image.
This is how specific it was. I heard the wood crack from the hands, the pressure, and then a second of pause, and then the thud shook my windows
like a human size.
1,000%. So we didn't tell anybody about this. And my buddy finally told him. He was like, man, one night I woke up and my dog was barking. She never barks. And he was like, I woke up and I heard a thud downstairs. He said something had opened his freaking arrowhead case where his, like, the stuff that he found that day was in his arrowhead case.
What?
I swear on my life.
So yeah, we've been on quite a few investigations and stuff. Fortunately, that's nothing like that's ever happened to us.
I always say, if there's something here or whatever's here, you can't come with us. It sounds silly, you're talking something you can't see or whatever, but I've had things happen to people where something did come home with them, and they had to do like a deliverance prayers to get rid of it,
Yeah,
or
Bruce
whatever
told
the
us
item
on
was.
the podcast that
Like,
one time. Bruce told us his story about it, and his was a pretty severe case of it.
yeah, his was he was doing a deliverance on a person, and they had like an attachment, and he did the deliverance prayers, and he believed he removed whatever was attached to this person, and he said I messed up. He said I made a mistake. He said I forgot to cleanse myself. He said I cleansed my team, I cleansed the person, I cleansed the home and everything. He says I forgot to cleanse myself. And he said he got home, took a shower, seemed normal, getting ready to go to bed. He said he laid down, and he said he felt a hand on his head, slamming his head into the pillow, pushing down on him. And I was like, "What did you do?" And he said, "Well, I got up and I did the deliverance prayer all over again, right there in my own bedroom." And he said, and that's how he got it to leave him alone, go away, whatever. But he said he took a break after that from the paranormal, and for a few years he just didn't go out after that, because that rattled him pretty good. So, but yeah,
It'd definitely be
there's
creepy.
like rocks. If they say don't bring any rocks back from Hawaii, they said a lot of times people end up mailing them back because they bring you bad luck, different things like that. They're if you bring something home from some location and you start having weird stuff happen, they say just mail it back or take it back to that location, and uh, usually that'll take care of it. Or sometimes you got to bring in a professional, someone who's versed in deliverance or exorcism type ideology, and to get rid of it. So, but yeah, if you don't want something coming home with you, and I don't ever tell it, you got to stay here, because the people that you're helping at their house, they may not want it there either. They want you to help get rid of it. So I always just say, you can't come with me. We don't care where it goes, but we don't really want it to stay there and to keep harassing the homeowner, and we don't want it to come with us. So we usually just tell it, can't come with us.
Well, we got time for one more video before we bring our guest on, so we'll go ahead and do this one real quick.
Cool.
The following footage is from a motorcycle rider in the Philippines. His GoPro captures something completely unbelievable and unexplainable. He said it was about 3 a.m. in the morning when he was riding home, when suddenly in the middle of the road, a young man or kid appears to almost collide with him. But the thing is, as he turns around to check on this kid, nobody's there. So he doesn't know if this is a ghost or if this is something else. But I'm going to throw something else out there for you to ponder. Could this be like what we would see in a sci-fi movie? A time hopper or time traveler hopping in and out? Take a look at this footage and tell me what you think.
Yeah, there's a lot of videos out and stuff where you'll see a lot of it looks like streaks and stuff, and people about to get ran over by something, they'll disappear, and they say, like she just said on that video, is this glimpse of time travel? Is this, um, you know, maybe a teleportation?
All I can say is you don't want to drive around of a night with polarized sunglasses on, because you might see some weird shit like that. One morning I thought I was running over raccoons, and they just kind of come at me like that and disappeared, and I braced for impact and nothing happened. I turned around, I stopped, and I was so sure I hit raccoons on my way home from work. I got out, walked around like there was a parking lot there on the side of out in the country where I was at, just to see if there was any, carcasses or nothing. But, normally you don't wear sunglasses when it's dark out, but I left my other glasses at work, and the only prescription ones I had were the sunglasses that I wore home the night before. I'm like, oh, well, what's it going to hurt? I got headlights on, but I didn't do that again after that. After seeing weird stuff, I'm like, no. Maybe now I'll
Absolutely.
go out with somebody else can drive, and I'll just ride with the polarized sunglasses. It's kind of like those Diocene glasses. I really want to try a set of those Diocene glasses because supposedly you can see auras and all kind of stuff with those. I've been wanting to try some of those out. But yeah, that looked like a kid for sure. Run right out like I thought he hit that kid, and then boom, just gone.
All right, you ready?
I'm ready.
All right, this time we'll bring on our guest.
Hello, hello.
Hello,
Hi, how are
Sylvia.
you?
I'm doing fantastic. Been enjoying the stories.
Awesome.
So before we get into kind of talking and stuff, you want to kind of tell everybody some info about you?
Sure. I've been a paranormal investigator for over a decade, and I also absolutely adore history. So I have really gotten into the ghost stories of a place. I really believe that you can't understand the ghost stories of a place without knowing the history behind it, because that's why we have the stories, is because of the lived history. I have written 10 books of paranormal nonfiction, and I've kind of expanded my wheelhouse in the past couple of years into true crime. A couple of my books have been true crime stories that have resulted in hauntings. I never thought I was going to write a series of books, but here we are. The second volume in that series, Grave Deeds and Dead Plots, came out this fall. So I'm very excited about that. And that has also been turned into a podcast. So if you dig true crime stories and you dig ghost stories, this is the combination of the two. It's been a lot of fun.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, we like true crime and some conspiracy theories, and we've been involved in a couple cases where people went missing, or they found evidence of not all of the person but parts of the person, and
Ooh.
they don't know what happened to them. Like this one lady went down to the convenience store to get milk one night, and she just disappeared.
Oh no.
And they found her head up in Wren Lake, Illinois, at Wayne Fitzgerald State Park,
I
1993.
know we're at Lake, yeah.
Two little girls were out hiking around in the campground. They found the severed head, and then it was about a year ago. They reopened the evidence and studied that the hair and different things, and they were able to do a DNA map back and found out who she was with new techniques.
Yeah, I
So
think I think I read a book about that. I think someone, a lady writer, wrote a book about that whole thing, because I remember Rend Lake and I remember the head. It was like a redhead, wasn't it?
Yep, and her
Yeah.
they called her Ina Jane Doe for a long time
Yeah.
because they're from the town of Ina.
Yeah, my in-laws used to live down in Golconda, so yeah, we used to drive through. Well, we used to see the highway sign for Ina, and we used to drive through Rend Lake on our way to visit them. So yeah, I know Rend Lake.
Her name was Susan Lund, and
Yeah.
they'd actually found out there was a condition with the neck because part of the neck was still there, and she had what they call Rhine neck syndrome, and
Mm.
that was one of the way they were able to confirm who it was with the DNA, and so that was we went over there, just me and my cousins were messing around with some equipment and stuff, and was trying to see if we could get any kind of response. And my uncle, his brother's a detective over there in that area, and he was getting ready to retire. And I'm like, did they ever find anything out? And he didn't say nothing else about it. And then a year later, they opened the case and found out who she was. So I don't know if he talked to his brother or he won't say anything about it, but that did open up. We do like true crime, and there's another missing persons case down in it's just the Kyler Bottoms down by Paducah, and the lady's
Oh.
been missing for about 6 years.
Oh my.
And and she was involved with a boyfriend and his father, and there's some other stuff, circumstances. They went out on a 4-wheeler, disappeared, and a friend of mine, it was her best friend's daughter, and she's one of our teammates. She's full
Oh.
Reiki master, and she's watching tonight, Jennifer. But it's too close to her. Basically, I don't know if you're familiar with people who have abilities, but if it's somebody that's close to them, their family, sometimes you got to bring in other sensitive people to help them get evidence.
Oh,
And
sure,
so
yeah.
far, so far they've drug a creek where the cadaver dogs were hitting, and they didn't find anything there. But they got another spot where the cadaver dogs were hitting, but it's been flooded. So you got to kind of almost wait till the water goes down a certain time of year. And so, yeah, we like true crime. I used to listen to Dave Schrader a lot when he was out of Minneapolis.
Yeah, yeah.
But then I'm not sure what he's doing right now. But he took over Midnight in the Desert for a while after Art Bell passed away. And
Mhm.
then last time I talked to him, I'm not sure what he's doing right now. I've been pretty busy to keep up with him, but
Yeah, that's the missing persons cases are just the most heartbreaking to me, I think, because you just don't have closure.
Right. And then, like where you're at, you had the gang out of Peoria there, and they used to fight with Al Capone's boys, and down south around Benton, you had
Yep, the Shelton gang.
the Shults gang. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of stuff about Smiling Charlie Berger down there. And
Mhm.
I've been to that jail twice and investigated. I still want to go inside, but we've always investigated outside. But trying to find a time when we could go down there. But
Mhm.
yeah, talk about true crime. You're right in the middle, right there where you're at.
Oh yeah. Definitely. Yeah, the next volume in the Grave Deeds and Dead Plot series is going to be all about gangsters. So yeah, I'll be writing about the Shelton gang because there's a bar outside Peoria I think it's on Farmington Road. But yeah, one of the guys was shot there and died. Like he came out, it was his bar, and he came out and was shot in the parking lot and managed to make it halfway through the door and died like half in and half out of the bar. So yeah, and that bar, I don't know if it's currently open to investigation. I've heard people talk about it, but I don't think they let people in. But oh yeah, there are some hair-raising stories that the bartenders have shared, like, talking with friends. So yeah, that place is extremely active. So I'm really looking forward to collecting all of those stories about Al Capone and Charlie Berger and the Shelton gang. And yeah, that's going to be great.
One place you can they don't advertise it a lot, but if you go to Oakville, the original Mineral Spring Hotel, it's only like $80 some a night. You can stay there. They still have mineral springs, and you can get a mineral bath and everything. And
Yeah.
that's where the Shelton gang and the St. Louis gang, they would meet there. They would go down to
Oh,
the
really?
bathhouse. They'd had guys guarding them, and they would kind of a place they could go chill out. And it was a meeting place for them. So I don't know
Oh.
down there, but you can, if you stay all night there, they don't care. They'll let you investigate. And they've had deaths
Yeah.
there. They've had suicides in there. And it's pretty active. I got down around the bathhouse number 3, and I had some SLS guy, a stick figure, come out, and he looked like he was drying off when he come out of there. And he just, and like 20 minutes
Cool.
later, off like one of those residuals. And so that's one place you could go if you stay all night. If you stay there all night, you can take 2 gallons of mineral water home with you. And
That's
the people
neat.
that work there, the people that work there actually see a lady in white there, and there's been 3 or 4 different people that still work there have seen her, and they're pretty open about talking about it. They're really cool about it. So it's not on the radar, as far as a real popular place to go. But that's somewhere if
Mhm.
you're trying to get more information for your true crime books, might be a stop.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And I know they have the best fried chicken I have ever eaten. Troy Taylor had one of his Dead of Winter conferences down there, several years ago. This is pre-COVID, and I went there for that and stayed for the chicken. I didn't stay overnight, but I stayed for the chicken dinner. It was fantastic. But I did not know about the gangster connection. Thank you very much.
Is that the one in Alton or the one in Okawville? Because the one in Alton is the one Troy Taylor runs, and it's shut down.
Yeah.
But you can do ghost tours there and stuff. But the one in Okawville, you can actually still stay there. They've got a restaurant, a pizza place, and a bar. And the breakfast to put Cracker Barrel to shame. It was delicious.
Well, I've been to Okawville, and I have also been to the Mineral Springs Hotel in Alton. I went to another winter conference, and I actually spoke there. I did a talk on my haunted zoos, museums, and amusement parks down there this February. Yeah, I think it was this February that I was down there in Alton, and I went down for the hotel is closed right now, but Troy has his museum down there. And he gave a talk on it was like sideshow freaks and whatnot a couple months ago. So I drove down there for that because I knew it was if Troy's doing a talk, I know it's going to be an amazing talk. So I went down there and saw the museum for the first time. I wanted to see the museum too. So yeah, it was a good time.
I want to check that out. Like I remember Troy Taylor. He started up in Decatur, that's kind of where I grew up there, and he was doing his Haunted Decatur series. And then he had the Haunted Decatur books, and the next thing, it's Haunted Alton, and it's Haunted Illinois. Now he's even writing about Egyptian pyramids and everything, which Vinny would probably be all about that one.
He wrote a fantastic book about the Curse of King Tut. So I bought that book from him, and that was just amazing. That was super fun. I mean, I've been obsessed with ancient Egypt since I was in early grade school, and this book, I learned things from reading this book, from reading Troy's book about it. So I'm always overjoyed to learn something new, especially about something that I've been reading about since I was a little kid.
Awesome. So do you have a story that you can share? It's like from your first book, or maybe just like a little piece or something that kind of sticks out that. Kind of give us a little taste. What was the name of that book?
Oh, my first book was called Ghosts of the Illinois River. That was a lot of fun to write. That was my first introduction to just writing ghost stories instead of writing fiction, writing things that have actually happened instead of just making it up. That was fun. I leaned very heavily. It basically follows the river. The stories in the book follow the river geographically, north to south. The Illinois River starts up by Kankakee and goes all the way down to Alton. Actually, it joins the Illinois River, joins the Mississippi at Alton. So I did get to write about Alton a bit. I spent a lot of time writing about Peoria because that's where I live. I live in Pekin, but Peoria is right there. One of my favorite stories from that book is about the one of the theaters in Peoria, the Peoria Players Theater, and they have a resident. They have several resident spirits. One of them is the ghost of Norman and Dean, who was a director there in the 1960s, and he passed away very young from cancer, like in his early 30s. And he loved the theater. He loved directing so much that he just stayed. So he is kind of the resident ghost of the theater. Every year the theater does an awards ceremony, and that's one of their awards is the Normie Awards in honor of their former director. Norman was a really interesting ghost to interact with. I visited the theater for an investigation, a proper investigation, just going there exploring by myself. And Norman is a trickster. He likes to play pranks on people. And he ended up, long story short, he ended up moving something that I had put down on a table, and then I walked away from that thing, and I knew I was one of two people there, and the other person was with me the whole time. But when we came back and looked for the item that I had put on a table, it was gone. And I said something about it, and the person showing me around laughed and said, "Oh yeah, that's Norman. He likes to play tricks on people." So that was really fun.
Those theaters can be pretty active.
And too, that book too, we'll throw a little plug here so you can get that on Kindle, and then we saw it on Amazon, paperback and stuff. So definitely check that out. It's full of a lot of fun stories.
Yeah. All of my books are available on Amazon, of course. I also like to send people to a website called bookshop.org. All of my books are available there as well. And if you make a purchase from bookshop.org, part of your purchase price also goes into a fund that is divvied up between independent bookstores. So it's kind of a way to shop local independent bookstores online, which I think is amazing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So we
Anything
have
to help them keep the doors open.
Yeah, exactly. And it helps them out. And yeah, Amazon doesn't need our money, but these independent bookstores do. So I try to send people to bookshop.org.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Then, so we have a couple videos we'll watch with you and stuff, kind of from your neck of the woods.
Cool. Let's do it.
The Peoria State Hospital in Bartonville, Illinois opened in 1902. Its goal was a whole new approach to the treatment of mental illness. Originally named Illinois Asylum for the Incurable Insane, the name was changed shortly after by Dr. George Zeller, as he didn't believe anyone to be incurable. The hospital operated with no bars on any doors or windows, no restraints used on the patients, and open door policy and only holistic treatments. Amazingly, in 69 out of 71 years it was open, the hospital ranked #1 for curing patients. After Zeller died in the 30s, the hospital still operated under his vision of no restraints, no sedation, and an 8-hour workday. However, it closed in 1973 due to the lack of staffing and funding, despite the staff protests. Today, the hospital is open for various tours, and it's also said to be haunted. One of the more well-known spirits is that of Mr. Bookbinder, who was a very well-liked patient that worked on the burial crew. During his funeral, over 400 people saw him attending. They even checked his casket to make sure he was still dead.
That's my beloved Peoria State Hospital. Yeah,
we got one little clip of it, and then we'll show that, and then we'll let you kind of.
All right, fantastic.
Yeah, we want to hear your take on it.
Did you know that Peoria State Hospital is the most haunted building in Illinois? It was opened as a lunatic asylum in 1902 by Dr. George Zeller. Dr. Zeller was actually really progressive, and unlike most other mental health facilities at the time, patients were treated with dignity and respect. But the most famous ghost of Peoria State Hospital is the ghost of Old Book. Old Book was admitted into Peoria State Hospital in 1908. And he was mute and illiterate. He was much loved by the staff and the patients, and he worked with the caretaking team, digging graves for patients who had passed away. He was deeply impacted by the death of every single patient, and he would attend the funeral of fellow patients and lean against an old elm tree, wailing and sobbing. Old Book died in 1910, and his death shook the hospital. 300 people attended his funeral. As the coffin was being carried to the grave, it suddenly became impossibly light, much to the shock of the people that were carrying it. At the same time, the people started to hear a wailing and sobbing sound coming from under the elm tree, and people turned to see the spectral image of Old Book under the elm tree, watching his own funeral and crying. His spectre dissolved into a mist, and the coffin was suddenly heavy again. Staff present were so shocked at what they had seen that they actually opened the coffin to make sure his body was really in there. It was, and Old Book was buried, but that's not the end of the story. The elm tree withered and died, and it was decided that it needed to be removed. But every time the caretakers tried to cut it down, this wailing sound would emanate from the tree itself. They even tried to set the tree on fire, but they swore that every time they did, a human figure would appear in the smoke and the fire would mysteriously go out. Eventually the tree was struck by lightning and was able to be removed, but Old Book's wails are still heard to this day. And the reason we know this story is that it affected Dr. George Zeller so much that he wrote about it in his book, Befriending the Bereft. And he swore that no matter how bizarre the story sounded, it was 100% true.
Oh boy. Yeah. Old Book. Oh, they both did a wonderful job of telling this story. Yes. And the second lady gave more details, and that's wonderful. Yeah, that's the two parts of the story is that Old Book cried at every funeral, and when it came time for his funeral, it was very well attended, and when they went to put the coffin into the grave, they discovered that it was very light, and heard Old Book crying and carrying on, and Dr. Zeller was at the funeral, and he was the one who said, we need this coffin open right now. And someone got a crowbar and jimmied it up and lifted the lid. And as soon as they did, they saw Old Book lying in the coffin, and the wailing at the tree stopped. And yeah, he was in his coffin, and he was undeniably dead. And Dr. Zeller wrote about it, and he said, it was awful, but it was real. I saw it. 100 nurses and 300 spectators saw it. And then, yeah, that's the second part of the story, is that the old elm started to die, and they watered it. They tried to keep Old Book's tree alive. But alas, it kept dropping leaves, and Dr. Zeller was a very safety-conscious guy, so he sent out a work crew to cut the tree down, and when the work crew started to do that, they swore they could hear the voice of Old Book coming from inside the tree, and when they tried to burn it down, they saw the face of Old Book in the flames and heard him crying in the crackle of the flames. So yes, the tree was allowed to die on its own, and when it came down, the legend is that it came down and fell right between the rows of tombstones and didn't damage a single stone as it fell. It's a wonderful story, and I love telling it. Is it true? No, it's not. Oh, I know. That's the part I don't like in the talks that I give, that I tell this story. I have to admit that it's not true. Dr. Zeller was a wonderful writer. I've read his books. I've read Befriending the Bereft, and they're beautifully written. He also wrote fiction. He was known as the Rudyard Kipling of America, and the Rudyard Kipling of England wrote to Dr. Zeller complimenting him on the quality of his short stories. So he wrote this story of Old Book because he was very upset at the fact that perhaps no one would remember how this patient was so compassionate that he would cry at the funerals of his fellow patients, even if he didn't know them. So was there a patient named A. Manuel Bookbinder at the Peoria State Hospital in the early 1900s? Yes, there was. Was he on cemetery detail? Yes, he was. Did he cry at every funeral? Yes, he did. And Dr. Zeller was so moved by this that he wrote this story. He started telling this story, and word got around to the other asylums in the United States. And he's kept getting letters from the superintendents of other asylums. And superintendents would come up to him and they'd say, hey, we've been hearing this nutty story about your asylum, about some ghost in the cemetery. And Dr. Zeller finally wrote a blanket letter and sent it out to all the medical journals that he was, and psychiatric journals that he was a contributor to. including, interestingly enough, the Journal for Society for Psychical Research, which is fun. And he said, all right, look, we have a lot of wonderful patients here. They all have their own stories. And sometimes these patients make it into my fiction. So, yeah, old book did exist. But the ghost story is something completely out of Dr. Zeller's imagination. Now, that being said, when TAPS came to investigate the Bowen building when it was still standing at the Peoria State Hospital, they also took an evening and went out to Cemetery 2, where Bookbinder is buried. And they set up a camera in front of that tombstone that you just saw. And they managed to capture a shadow figure coming out from behind one of the trees on the tree line. Cemetery 2 is surrounded by ravines. So they captured a shadow figure coming out from, starting behind one of the trees and going across a couple of trees and then disappearing. And this was right at the ravine. No human person could have stood and walked in that particular place, particularly after dark. So they figured, oh gosh, we captured the ghost of Old Book because it was in Cemetery 2. But I've just told you that the ghost of Old Book was completely made up by Dr. Zeller. So who was it that TAPS captured? Well, in 1906, there was a fellow that came to us from Hannah City, which is only about 30 minutes away or so by car. I'm sure it was longer than that by wagon, the way he came. His name was Charles Jones. And this fellow was in his early 70s, and he was suffering from depression. So he checked himself into the Peoria State Hospital. He came to us for help. And like the video said, there were no locks on the doors. The only wards that were locked were the violent wards for the men and for the women. Every other cottage, every other hospital was not locked. And the patients were allowed to wander all over the hilltop and sometimes even beyond. They were not restricted in their movements in any way. Before the Peoria State Hospital was on the hilltop, it was the site of a mining operation. And when the miners moved out, they left some of their materials. So Mr. Jones was doing some exploring on the hilltop on his home, and he came across some of these mining supplies, including a blasting cap, which he picked up and he put in his pocket. And after he had been with us for about 6 weeks or so, he decided that he no longer wished to fight these demons of depression that were attacking him. So he went out to one of the ravines and he put the blasting cap between his teeth, and he either bit down or punched himself in the jaw and blew his head off. The newspaper said he was decapitated as neatly as if it had been done with a guillotine. So, since Mr. Jones did this deed in the ravines, and that apparition was captured in one of the ravines, our historians, and myself included, and I tend to agree with them, think that the apparition that TAPS captured was not Bookbinder after all, but Charles Jones. So that's an incidence where history gives you a clue as to what spirit you're interacting with.
Yeah, they say sometimes when you go fast like that, instantly, they may not know they're dead. You know, they're still walking around and
right.
Kind of it's.
And if he was in such a depressed funk that he was willing to do that to himself, there's every possibility that he might not realize that he's dead. So, yeah.
So we know that you do some paranormal investigating yourself.
I do.
So You've have you done investigations there at the hospital or on the
Oh,
facility?
good heavens, yes. I've investigated there many, 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 many times. As it's only about a 10-minute motorcycle ride from my front door, and I'm so grateful for that. I mean, you say haunted mental asylum, and your mind goes all American Horror Story on you, and you assume that there was pain and fear and abuse. And it is my privilege and my joy to tell people that was not the case here at the Peoria State Hospital. This was a place of deep compassion. It was a place where the patients were treated like family members. Dr. Zeller and his wife, Sophie, spoke of the patients being their children. They never had children of their own. And all the patients that passed away and were buried on the hilltop, those were our sleeping children. So they were very compassionate, and they trained their staff the same way. I have done investigations in the Bowen building before it came down. I've spent a lot of time in the Pollock Hospital, which is the former tuberculosis ward. And that's a really fun place to investigate because it is very active. It's not the most active building on the hilltop. I am told that was one of the hospitals that has since been torn down was the most active place. Unfortunately, I never got to experience that. That was before my time. But
Yeah, we did Waverly back in July.
oh yeah, that's a fun place. I've been, and that's amazing. Penhurst is spooky, but yeah, Waverly's fun. So the Bowen building. You saw pictures of it in those two videos, that great big lovely stone building. The public face of the Peoria State Hospital is what that was. Dr. Zeller himself passed away in that building. The third floor was actually apartments that were reserved for the doctors and for people who were visiting their families that were from far out of town. There were apartments there for people to stay at when they were visiting family members in the asylum. But Dr. Zeller had one of those apartments, and he spent his last years there. His wife, Sophie, predeceased him by about 6 months. There was also a housekeeper in 1915 who fell ill while she was working. She went into a diabetic coma and passed away. We're not sure if she died in the Bowen building where she was working, or if she was taken to one of the other dormitories. So she may also have died in the Bowen. So 3 people tops died in the Bowen. The Pollock, on the other hand, the Bowen looks like it has every right to be haunted. The Pollock Hospital looks like an abandoned grade school. It doesn't look threatening at all. But this was the tuberculosis ward, and it was built in 1950 and closed along with the rest of the hospital in 1973. During that period of 23 years, there was an average of 3 to 5 deaths a week in that building. It started off as the tuberculosis hospital and later became the geriatrics ward. Before the Pollock Hospital was built, there was a kind of a batwing shaped building on that land. And even before that hospital, there were tent colonies set up for the care of tuberculosis patients. So people have been dying of TB on that particular plot of land for a very long time. One of my favorite spirits on the hilltop, I have 2 favorites of ghosts at the Peoria State Hospital. One of them is Rhoda Derry, and the other is a young man who passed away from tuberculosis. He says the last year he remembers is 1910. So he was not in the Pollock Hospital, but he was in one of the tents for care of tuberculosis patients. I spoke with him using the help of a friend of mine who is a psychic medium. we've had many wonderful conversations, and he's like 24 years old. He's a very, very sweet kid. Um, he told us that he could. I asked him, what was it like in there? And he said there were movies every Friday night. The patients at the Peoria State Hospital were treated like normal members of society, as far as they could be. They had movies every Friday night. They had dances every Saturday night. Every Sunday after church, when the weather was fine, they would have baseball games. So I asked Chris about this, and he said, we could hear the music coming from the other cottages when they had dances on Saturday nights, but we couldn't go and join the dancing because we were in quarantine. And I thought that was just the saddest thing. So the next time I visited the hospital and went down into the basement where Chris is, I had recorded a ragtime dance on my phone. And I played it for him. And my interpreter, Diane, was there. And she said, while the music was playing, she said, he's doing something with his hands on his knees. I said, oh my God, he's doing the Charleston, which I thought was delightful. And the music stopped, and he said, no one's ever done that for me before. So I just thought it was wonderful. I could bring
whenever
him
the
that
flapper dress on, you probably get some reaction.
Yeah. We played a modern song for him too, and he enjoyed the music. I mean, I guess he just missed music. I write about this in the second asylum book that I did, Fractured Souls, but I actually taught myself a ragtime dance, and I brought it to the basement and was trying to remember the choreography and everything. And Diane was down there with me, of course, to translate. And I said, Chris, I learned to dance so that I could dance with you. I know how much you miss it, so I will dance with you if you want me to. And Diane said he stood up and offered his hand to me. And I'm like, okay, I guess we're doing this. I guess we're dancing. So I started the music going, and I walked to the middle of this basement, and I started going through the steps. And it's called the castle dance. It's one of the ragtime dances from like the 1910s. And there's one part in the dance where the couple turns. And of course, I turned the wrong way. I turned opposite of the way I should have. And Diane, from her seat in the corner, yells out, he says you're trying to lead. I said, oh, gosh, that's right. I'm sorry. Sorry. That was me. So we finished the dance, and he was very happy that I had taken the time to dance with him.
Music is universal. Like one of our other teammates, we were doing a live at his house a few weeks ago, and we were just messing around. I said, I've heard music, can kind of stir up some activity. So I'm thinking he's going to play a song on his phone. Oh no, he gets out his guitar and starts playing, and we're singing along. And he hits a Charlie Daniels song. The next thing we know, our REM pod's going off, our cat ball's going off, all kinds of stuff going crazy. Yeah, it's one of the square REM pods with the multiple colored lights, and it went like to the third or fourth light, and it's just going crazy.
Oh, very cool.
And then he's in apartments, kind of like senior apartments. Everybody around there's kind of retired and whatnot. And the neighbor comes over. She's like, "What are you guys doing over there?" I'm like, "Well, our investigation going on. We're kind of singing along." And she goes, "Well, there's stuff flying off the wall in my apartment over here." And we're like, "We're sorry. You want us to stop? We'll stop." She goes, "What song were you playing?" And we're like, "Charlie Daniels." And she goes, "You say Charlie Daniels?" We're like, "Yeah." She goes, "That was my brother's favorite." We're like, "Okay, where's your brother?" She goes, "He's been dead for 2 years." And then we played Jimmy Buffett. We played a bunch of other stuff. Modern stuff, and then we played another Charlie Daniels song, and we started getting more activity again. So we're like, well, she told us her brother's name, and I said, if this is you, make it stop. And then everything just kind of quit. And I was like, I think your brother's here. I don't know how to explain this, but I think because what we were originally there checking it out because he heard a woman telling him, "Hey, what are you doing in my house?" And he's like, so he were investigating, and he had a fiddle laying on a table, and we heard it kind of plucking around. But
Oh,
apparently, the
nice.
woman who lived there before him had passed away, and she laid there for a week before they found her.
Oh,
And right there in his living room. So we think that's who was stirring up some things because he heard her talking to him. But then next thing you know, the neighbors got stuff going on. So we may have to
wow.
go back to it. But that was music. Music brought the whole thing on.
Oh,
And
fabulous.
we played some Civil War music or like Civil War marching battle type stuff. We were up at Perryville Battlefield, and we were trying to elicit a response up there.
Yeah.
Pretty interesting place up there.
Yeah, I was in Gettysburg, and we were exploring this family has basically what was a Confederate field hospital in their backyard, which is just amazing to me. So yeah, they opened that up for investigations, and we were there. We were a friend of mine and I, and her daughter, another. They're both very powerful psychic mediums. It runs in their family. So the three of us were sitting around a campfire in the back part of this, out in the woods. And the guy who owned the house told us, he said, I will try to make a campfire here. There was a campfire going up in the backyard by the house, and there was another fire pit back in the woods. And he said, I'll try to build a fire and it will keep going out. And I can't keep a fire lit in this fire pit. And we figured out that it was probably because the Confederates were in enemy territory, and they didn't want a fire to be seen. They didn't want to attract attention. So we figured out that's why there won't the fire will not stay lit in that fire pit. But Liz and Angel and I were sitting around this fire pit, and we had a spirit box going. And I sang Dixie for the Confederates that were hopefully gathering around the fire pit with us. And they seemed to really like that. I got out a water bottle and I said, I'm sorry, sir, I don't have a cup, but I poured some water out in my hand. And I said, I'd like to offer you a drink. I bet you're thirsty. So I poured some water in my hand, and we got a thank you from the spirit box. So we got some really interesting responses from, we call it the unfire. And then this had nothing to do with the Confederates at all, or any Civil War soldiers at all. But all of a sudden, Angel started getting distressed. And Liz, her mother, said, we have to go right now. And I have been investigating with Liz for years. She's my best friend in the world. So when she says we have to leave, I believe her. So we gathered everything up really quick, and I led them through the trail paths back to the backyard and the house. And when we got to the backyard, I turned to her and I said, all right, you want to tell me what that was all about? And she said, you didn't hear that? I said, hear what? She heard what sounded like a bear's roar there by the campfire. And there are actually black bears in the woods around Gettysburg. So she was absolutely convinced that a bear was coming to investigate what we were doing. So we hightailed it out of there. And I did not hear a bear, and none of the other investigators in the area heard anything like that. But Liz and Angel heard a bear. So I went back out there to keep investigating, and they were done for the night. They're like, you go on ahead, you have fun, we're staying here.
We went on a Sasquatch Bigfoot type thing, and the homeowner was having a lot of weird stuff going on in the home too. They were getting scratched, and we found some mounds behind their house, native mounds, and I was kind of interested in the whole. They said they seen red eyes. I think there's some Bigfoots back there and whatnot. And
wow,
right as soon as I got there, they came running up from the backyard, and they're like, "Hey, Phil, there was a bear." Like, what do you mean there was a bear? And they're like, it was just here in the backyard. I'm like, what? And then so the homeowner tells me, he goes, yeah, I had to shoot one like about a month ago. And,
oh no,
came after my wife, and then he proceeds to tell me the neighbors are leaving food out for him, and they got trail cams and they're watching them. And I'm like, and you want me to go out there looking for Bigfoot when they're feeding the bears? I'm like,
oh my
and then it started
gosh,
pouring down rain. I'm like, I'm not getting out there and they're pouring down rain. You wouldn't be able to hear a twig snap or anything. And I just thought that was kind of crazy with the bear, but the whole red eyes thing, they're up on a ridge, and then there were ridges lower than where we were on the highest ridge, and there were cell phone towers and radio towers, and they were below where we were. So the tops of them were at eye level. So basically, like, hey, we're seeing these red eyes. I'm like, okay. And he goes, well, they just blinked off. They just blinked back on. Well, they just blinked back off again. I'm like,
debunked.
Is it right here by the tree? They're like, yeah. I'm like, that's a cell phone tower.
Yeah,
That's why they're blinking off and on, and it's like airplane lights. And then the other thing, they kept seeing these red eyes. You would see them every night at the same spot. So I go out there, and it turned out there was a car out in the woods, and it was the back of the car, and the red tail lights, when you hit a flashlight, would look like two little red eyes.
Yeah.
We won't debunk all that, but yeah.
Oh man,
we had a few come through this area, right up there where Vinny lives, up there by Glasgow, and they had one come through Mumfortville, Mammoth Cave, Smith's Grove, and Scottsville around here. We've seen them. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, we don't try not to mess with bears, but I don't blame those ladies. If I heard a bear, I'd probably be leaving too.
Yeah, yeah, they were done. I it's satisfying in a way when you can debunk something. I was out at the Peoria State Hospital, and we were wandering around Cemetery 2 looking for Bookbinder, and this woman came running up to me, and she said, oh, I just made contact with a spirit because she showed me her perfume. And I thought to myself, what could this be? And it was at the end of April, beginning of May. And I said, all right, so this perfume that you smelled, did it smell like flower-scented bubblegum? And she said, yeah, that's exactly what wow, how did you know? And I said, well, the black locust trees are in bloom. That's what you were smelling, not spiritual perfume or anything. It was black locust that you were smelling, sweetie. I didn't say
anything
that. I said,
you ever smelled anything in the old hospital?
I have. Yes, I have. I don't know how much time we have left, but in a nutshell, my other favorite spirit on the hilltop is a woman named Rhoda Derry, and her story is absolutely compelling and very, very strange and very eerie. But she manifests. She was brought to the Peoria State Hospital at the very end of her life, and she spent about 2 years with us. She had the habit of chewing tobacco. She picked up the habit of chewing tobacco when she was in her teens, and even when she was at the state hospital, she had lost the ability to speak, but she would ask for chewing tobacco by pulling on your pants leg and asking for, making a motion that she wanted some chewing tobacco. So that's how she manifests on the hilltop. Is if you're anywhere on the hilltop, but especially by her grave in Cemetery 1, if you smell chewing tobacco and you feel a tugging on your pants leg, that's Rhoda trying to communicate with you. And I think that's so fascinating that she knows her own ghost lore. She knows that if you feel a tugging and you smell chewing tobacco, you're going to be looking around for her spirit. And I think that is just the most fascinating thing in the world, that she knows that about herself. But I told Rhoda's story when I was with a group in the Pollock Hospital, and we were in the women's ward, which tends to have less activity than the men's ward does. So we were in there not getting any much of activity at all. So I told Rhoda's story just to pass the time. And I said that about the chewing tobacco and whatnot. And we were still getting absolutely nothing. So we decided to go to a different area of the building. And as we were walking out, every single last one of us smelled chewing tobacco. So,
you ever offered her any?
People have offered her chewing tobacco before, and she seems very pleased with it. I have a friend who is also very close to Rhoda, and he visits her grave quite often. And he is in the habit of recording anytime he goes to the Peoria State Hospital. And he was standing by Rhoda's grave, and he said, "Oh, Rhoda, I meant to bring you some tobacco, and I forgot. I am so sorry." And he caught an EVP that said, "That's all right. I can't chew anymore." Yeah.
So we've got a guy on our team, Gary. He's what you call a clairaudient. He doesn't see anything, but he can hear things talking to him.
Oh, that's
I was
amazing.
I was in a cemetery with him one night, and he said, "This guy Frank over here says he hasn't had a cigarette in a long time. He'd like to have a smoke." And Gary smoked, so Gary's holding the cigarette out there.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay. And he goes, "Well, he told me he wanted a couple puffs off of it." And it's like you see it lighten up on the end. And I'm like, okay, is there a breeze coming through here? He swerves up and down. The guy was taking a puff off his cigarette. And he's done that twice. He did that up at Perryville, too. We were up there. And he's like, "Yeah, this soldier says he wants to have some of my smoke, and drag off my smoke." And he's holding it out there. And I'm trying to film it and everything. And I'm like,
Yeah.
did that light up?
Oh, that's brilliant. My husband and I used to own a bar in Pekin, and it was haunted to the rafters. And we had a couple of groups come in, and one time somebody left a vape pen on the bar top, and no one was within 10 feet of this thing, and we watched it light up like someone was taking a drag off of it.
Wow.
It was so cool.
I got a friend in Pekin there. A shout out to Big Paul, and I'll do a quick story. Anyway, he bought a house. He lived over on Charlotte Street, and he moved to the other side of town. And
okay, I'm real close to Charlotte Street.
Yeah, and then when he moved, one of his family members said, "Well, what's your new house look like?" He goes, "Well, there's pictures on Zillow." They're like, "Okay," so they pull up the picture, and they're like, "Hey, look, it must be a new picture." Like he collects gargoyles, and they're like, "Well, look, your gargoyles right there in the front of the flower bed." He goes, "What?" And they go, "There's a gargoyle right there in the flower bed." And he was like, "Well, that picture was taken before we moved there. They hadn't taken any pictures since they moved in, but he put his gargoyle almost in the same exact spot."
Wow.
Which I thought was really weird. And then he went down to the basement. There's a big mural on the wall, hand-painted mural. And it's a mural of like a fox hunt, like over in England where they have the dogs and they chase the fox on the horses and everything, and they're bugling and all that.
Yeah.
And the corner of it is the artist has his same exact last name. So he's like, "Phil, this is weird. The gargoyle's in the same damn spot where I put my gargoyle." And he goes, "It's got my last name on this painting." I said, "Well, it must be meant to be." And so far, they've been
brilliant.
Pretty happy. Yeah, they've been pretty happy there, but it's kind of a weird thing in Pekin.
Yeah, Pekin's a strange place. Not as strange as Bartonville or Peoria, but Pekin's pretty strange in its own way.
There was a cemetery in Bartonville. I'd read some stories where people hear, and it almost sounds like your book story, the old bookbinder, but it's very similar. They hear somebody like wailing or crying or hollering out to them. It's been 3 or 4 people experience it, and it's in Bartonville, I believe, on the other side of the river.
Yeah,
just south of Peoria there.
Yeah, that might be. I investigated I think it was called the Craft Cemetery.
Sounds
That's yeah, that's up Pfeiffer Road a little bit from the asylum, and then you oh, I forget what road you turn onto, but it's a little way down that road. And yeah, I think there's definitely ghost lore from that. I'm not really familiar with it, but yeah, I had that suggested to me as a place to investigate. So I went out there a couple times, and yeah, there's vibes there. We have a cemetery here in Pekin, just outside of town, that I don't even know if it has a name, but there are quite a few people buried out there, maybe I don't know, 150, 200 or so. But there's a little girl named Esther whose grave is out there, and she likes to play hide and seek among the tombstones under a full moon.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
We captured it was over in Marion, Kentucky, and the image we got was under a full moon, and it was right. My recorder died, and it's like, oh, my recorder died, and one of my other teammates was taking pictures. Jordan was taking pictures, and he goes, "I think I got something." I said, "Okay, I'm going to hold perfectly still. I won't move. Take
Yeah.
5 more pictures just to make sure it's not a reflection of the moonlight or me or my headlight, whatever." And
Yeah.
this thing looks like a shadow of a lady standing there, and then the next picture's nothing, and that was in the moonlight. I think the moonlight has something to do with paranormal energy, but it
Mm.
was showed up in the moonlight. But then, we tried to debunk it. We're looking at tombstones, but nothing there was shaped like that, and it doesn't look like me. The legs are different. It's standing apart. My legs are together. It looks like a
Mhm.
woman standing there, like talking to me or something. It's pretty crazy.
Oh,
It's on
wow.
our Facebook and our YouTube. Any evidence we get, we post it. We don't hold anything back. And
Uh-huh.
if we think it's interesting, we don't claim that it's anything, what we think it is. We just kind of tell you what it is, what we think it is, but we don't know. We
Mhm.
feel like there's no thing as a paranormal expert because we're all still trying to search for answers. But
Oh yeah. There's no such thing as an expert. Not in this field.
well, I really enjoyed having you on and your stories. Looking forward to reading some of your books.
Thank
And
you.
Absolutely. And then I shared that in the link too in the comments on the page here.
Wonderful.
I
Thank
shared the
you.
link to yourbookshop.org.
Great.
So definitely we will check those out. Hopefully we can get you maybe talk again.
That would be
Kind of
lovely.
get into some stories and stuff like that. That'd be a lot of fun.
Yeah, we could talk about haunted zoos, museums, and amusement parks, or true crime, or something. We don't have to always talk about the Peoria State Hospital, although it is fun.
Absolutely.
But thank you so much for having me on, guys. I had a blast.
Thank you.
We appreciate everybody tuning in this week. Loved having Sylvia on. Very interesting lady. Very talented with her books. And hopefully we'll have something just as exciting next week. We got Thanksgiving coming up next week, so not sure what we'll have going on next weekend, but appreciate everybody turning in, and y'all have a good week and a good happy Thanksgiving holiday. And thanks for tuning in. And you can all come back again here. You hear? Come on.